So we were discussing in our chapter module 2, we have a different modeling, right? So both the state modeling we have. So in our chapter 6, what we are discussing about the advanced state modeling. So what are the different problems that we are going to face with respect to a state diagram when we are going to have a flat state diagrams. Say the state diagrams can be a structured or unstructured. So if the state diagram is a unstructured and if it is a flat, so if we are going to have a n number of states with the Boolean attributes which are going to control over the different states, then what happens? There arises a problem where the model cannot be represented in a proper way, because when you say a Boolean attributes, the Boolean attributes contains only two values, either true or false. So with respect to n number of states, so either it can execute the state or may not execute the state. So to represent that, what we need to do, we need to expand the state diagram. So how do we do the expansion of the state diagram? So the expansion of the state diagram can be done by organizing the model into the sub diagrams by extracting some states. So say for example, what we are doing when we are having a large program, when we want to represent that has a sub module or a subsystem, what we are doing, we are representing that in terms of a programming routines. We are going to represent it in a routing. So what we are going to do, say if we take a C programming as an example, we are going to label that. It will go to that label, it will execute that subroutine, and it will come back to the program where it was executing. So in such a manner, the program will be executed. So in a similar manner, how can we represent that through the state model? That is one of the question that rises. So here is an example of a substituting of a particular state. Say for example, here we are trying to insert a coin. So from the insertion of the coin, how do we collect the amount? So initially the system will be in a idle state. So when a coin or a amount is being inserted, it will collect the coin. So it will identify if no more changes are there, if the item cannot be selected, then what happens, it will go and refund the amount and it will come back to the idle state. So if the money is being collected, if the item is being selected, then what happens, it will test the system and it will make the necessary changes and it will go for a dispense item. So here dispense is a one of the sub diagram of a state diagram. So how do we represent that sub diagram? So here below is a sub diagram of a dispense item. Okay, so when we say a dispense item, so it will come to this dispense item, it will move the arm. Okay, so either in a column, it will move to the column, it will push the shelf, it will dispense the item and it will come back to the original state. So after dispensing the item, it will go back to the initial state. So that is how the dispensing of an item is going to work. And in the next thing, we have a nested states. So when you say a nested states, what happens? We have seen for a telephone line system, how do we ensure the activities, what are the activities that can be carried out when we are trying to run the, when we are trying to identify the behavior of the system. So the nested state indicates that, so this is a repeated process. So we have taken an example of a telephone system. So in the telephone system, we have an active state and an idle state. So in an active state, we have represented a different states. One is a dial tone, dialing, connecting, busy tone, fast, busy tone, ringing state, connected, disconnected, and warning and timeout. So here what happens? So the idle state is not in a active state because it will be not, that telephone line will be not in a working condition or it will be not in a usage. So from the idle state, when you pick up a receiver, it will give you a dial tone. So once the dial tone is being heard, so here what we are doing below that, what event is going to execute, that we have specified here. Do sound dial tone. That means when a receiver is picked, so what happens? It will allow the user to listen to the dial tone. So from the dial tone, it will move to the dialing. From the dialing, in the dialing, what happens? The user has to dial n number of digits. So once the n number of digits is being dialed, so what happens? There can be different states that can occur after dialing the number. So one is a timeout. So after dialing the number, due to some reason, the phone may not be connected. So you will get a beep sound for trying for a connection. So once the timeout occurs, it will pay a message. Or if the number, whatever the number that the customer dialed, then what happens? It will display the recorded message that the message cannot be, the number is an invalid number. Say assume that if the dialed number is a valid number, so what happens? It will find the connection, it will route the call, it will start ringing. So once the bell starts ringing, so what happens? It will, the callee will be answered, the callee answers the call, and the call will be it will be in a connected state till their conversation moves on. So once the conversation ends, then what happens? It will come to the disconnected. Say if the number is valid, so there can be two things that can happen. Either it can have a trunk can be busy, or it can have, the number can be busy. So this is how we are trying to represent the nested state model for a diagram. So the next thing is, we can have a we can have one more example for nested states. So how the car transmission is going to work. So you can see here the pentagon symbol where it indicates the name of a state diagram. So first the car will be in a neutral state. So either if the car owner want to take the car in a reverse direction, he is going to push the reverse gear. It will move from neutral gear to the reverse gear. Again, he will come back to the neutral. So from the neutral, he can have a nested states. So either he can go drive the car in a first gear, second gear, or a third gear. So to move forward or to make the car has a transition, what happens? So this entire thing will be in a loop. So that is how the nested state diagram is going to work with respect to the car transmission. So the next one is, we have a signal generalization. So we have come across a what is a generalization? Acquiring the property of a superclass to the base class. So similarly, what we can have, we can represent the entire thing in terms of a signal. So when you say a signal generalization, so it depends upon what type of input that a user is providing for a system. So that is the reason the user input is taken as a signal class depending upon a device. So the device can be either a keyboard, or it can be a mouse, or it can be a barcode reader. So that has not been included. So since barcode reader is one of the input, that also can be specified. So here they have taken, there exists two type of classes. So one is a mouse button and one more is a keyboard character. So in this class, what happens? Either the mouse button up or down can be done, or if it is a keyboard character, so when a user is using a user can give an input in terms of a control or in terms of a graphic. The graphic can be either a space, alphanumerics, punctuation. So he can give a different types of input that can be taken. So here what we are taking it has in terms of a signal class where the signal can be generalized into a different kinds of input. So based on our input we are trying to identify so how the input can be considered in a working state. So how the characters or graphics can be printed over a terminal. So that is to explain the situation of that we are using a signal generalization. So next thing is concurrency. When we say a concurrency, so the concurrency indicates the state model, how the systems can be taken into the consideration. So when you want to run a two processes simultaneously, so how the process are independent of each other, so how the behavior is going to happen, that we are trying to observe with respect to the concurrency. So in a concurrency, we have a aggregation of a concurrency. So here what happens, we are trying to aggregation indicates we are trying to combine our different parts and we are looking that has a one particular object. So when you are combining for different parts, so how one part can run parallelly with respect to the another card. Say for example, if you take a car as an example, you are applying a clutch, brake, accelerator. So when you are using a clutch and a accelerator, how both of them are concurrent to each other. So when you are in a signal, so what you will do, you will try to apply a clutch and you will come back, you will reduce the speed of the car by removing your leg, right? So you are trying to speed up the car and you are trying to change the gear. So all the three things are happening simultaneously. So when all these three things are happening simultaneously, so how the system can behave, that can be taken. So for that what we have an example of a car. So the car is composed of ignition, transmission, accelerator, and a brake. So when we say all these four items are different parts, so how these parts can run parallelly with each other. So when you say a ignition, so ignition will be in a off state, so from the off state it will come to the on state. So when the key is started, so what happens, it will come to the starting state. So when you release the key, so what happens, it will come to the on state. So from the on state you can move back to the off state. So similarly, what we have a transmission. So this diagram I have explained already. So from the neutral, it will come back to the reverse gear. So from the reverse gear, so the owner is trying to push to the neutral, and after coming back to the neutral, so he has to take the car forward. So what he will do, he will be keep on changing according to the speed that is being required. Okay, either first, second, or a third gear. So next we have a accelerator. So when we say accelerator, so accelerator can be depressed or it can be released. That means you can raise the accelerator or you can decrease the speed of the accelerator. Next comes a brake. So when you want to stop the vehicle completely or completely slow down, so then you are using the brake. So when you depress a brake, so it will move from a on state off state to the on state. From on state, again if you release the brake, then what happens, it will go to the off state. So that is how the accelerator is going to work. So next we have a interaction model. So in our interaction model, again we have a three different classification of a model. So one is a use case model, and one is a sequence model, and one more is a activity model. So when we say a use case model, so how we are trying to identify the system. So the use case model indicates two different things. One is a use case and one is the actor. So how do we define an actor? So the actor can be an external user of a system. So how the user is going to interact with the system. So how he is going to communicate with the system, that can be represented with respect to the user and the system. So to represent a system, what we are using a use case. So the use case is defined as a coherent piece of a functionality that a system can provide by interacting with the actor. That means we are representing whatever the system that we have proposed. So in that particular system, we are identifying what are the different functionalities that are available with respect to the system. So after identifying the different functionalities, we are identifying the within that particular system who are the different external users. So the external actors. So the actors can be that actors can be a he can be a customer, he can be in terms of a passenger, or he can be a it can be a system, external devices, software, or it can be an admin. Depends upon what type of system that we are going to identify. So depending upon the system, what we are trying to indicate, we are trying to indicate how the user is going to behave with respect to each and every functionality. So we are trying to relate the actor with the certain use cases. So which use case he is going to perform. So what functionality that a particular user is going to perform. So depending upon the type of the interaction, we are going to map the use case. So here what we have an example of a vending machine. So in a vending machine, what we have a different things. One is a buying of beverage, perform the scheduled maintenance, make a repair, load the item. These are the um, four different use cases. So when you say buy a beverage, so what happens? Our customer want to purchase a beverage. So either it can be a coffee, tea, or milk, or any other thing that can be taken as a beverages. So that beverage he is going to select. After selecting, he is going to pay for it. That's the relationship in buyer beverage and the customer. So next, what we have a one more person called as a technician. So what the technician will do? The technician has to identify when the machine is coming for a repair. So he need to the machine has to be maintained. So the two things will be taken care by the technician. So either he is going to make a scheduled maintenance. Say if the maintenance is scheduled today, so after 6 months, he will say that it has to be again maintained. You can call me for maintenance. So after 6 months, he will be called for a maintenance. Or if any other parts of the system, vending machine is not working, he is a responsible person to repair the vending machine. And one more use case we have is the loading the item. So once the items are cleared, then what happens? There should be some person who need to take care how much of stock is available. So the availability of the stock will be concerned with respect to the clerk. So he is going to take care of the system. And next thing is when we say a use case system, we also need to indicate the error in the system. So when you say a error in the system, maybe the beverage stock may be running out of beverages may be running out of the stock, or whatever the coins that the customer has inserted, maybe the changes may not be there. Okay, so there are there are various types of exceptions that can be handled with respect to the use cases. So we can have a representation of a use case. So the use case representation consists of the use case, name of a use case, okay, and the summary of the use case, who are the actors who are going to interact with the system, what is the precondition to execute that particular use case, then the description of the use case, exceptions, okay. When you say exceptions, one is a cancelled, one is out of stock, insufficient, money. These are the different exceptions that we can have, and one is a post condition. So this is how we are trying to represent the use case description. So it should also contain a precondition, post condition, exception, name of the use case, and the actor who is going to communicate with the system. So that is how we are trying to represent a general use case. So when you say a use case diagram, so the use case diagram can be taken with respect to a UML. So when you say when we say a UML notation, so this is how we are trying to represent the actor. So the actor is also called as a stickman. In another term, it depends upon what type of system that we are trying to use. So in all the cases, you cannot say that the actor can be a customer, he cannot be a repair technician. So it depends upon what type of system that you are trying to use. Say for example, if you are taking a railway reservation, so the actors can be a reservation system. One more is a passenger who is going to book for the system, and one more is a one more is a bank. One more actor you can take it as a banking system. Okay, so that is how we are trying to represent the use case. So with respect to the vending machine, what we can have, so we have a different use cases, all the 4 different use cases: buy beverage, perform scheduled maintenance, repair, and load items. So these are the 4 different use cases. So when we are taking a use case, so that use case is being represented in terms of a oval shape. The oval shape represents the functionalities of the system. So all the functionalities should be written within a within a box, and the name of the use case should be written. So what type of system that we are using? So the system name is a vending machine, so that has to appear on the top. So below the name of the system, or below the problems name, so what we need to do, we need to list out all the functionalities. So after listing all the functionalities, we need to list what are the possible actors, who are the possible actors. So after specifying the actors, we need to associate the use case with the respective actor. So since the user actors are the external users, so we are representing all the use cases within a box. So that is the reason we are representing the actors in a, we are calling it as a external user. So when we are using a guidelines of the guidelines for a use case, so we have four different guidelines. So the first thing is we need to determine the boundary of the system. That means we need to be clear. So what type of system that we are trying to develop, what are the functionalities, so who are the users. So users are nothing but the actors. So if the system boundary is unclear, to identify the problem statement, it may be, if it is difficult, then to identify the use case and the actors may not be a good situation, or the system may go in a has a wrong model. Next thing is, we need to ensure that actors are focused. So whatever the actors that we are identifying, we need to identify it in a proper way. Say for example, if you take it as admin, so what type of admin? So what is the work of that admin? So when you take with respect to the DPMS, there can be a database administrator, he can be a system admin. So what type of administrator he is? It should be a clear one. And the next thing is each use case must provide a value to the user. That means what? So how the user is being represented. So what are the whatever the user that we have defined, it should not be too narrow. That we need to identify. And next thing is we need to relate the use case and the actors. So as I said, we have external users, we have a functionalities. So whatever the functionalities that we have taken, so each and every actor has to be related with respect to that particular users. So next comes a sequence model. So when you say a sequence model, what we need to do, first thing is we need to generate a scenario. So what is the scenario actually? So it is like a scenario is nothing but it is like a story kind. So how the system is going to work.
Ma'am,
The entire thing we are representing in terms of a storyline. So after what are the different events? So in a scenario, we are identifying what are the
ma'am, screen is not visible, ma'am.
what
Screen is not visible.
screen is not visible. Huh? Okay. I didn't share. Now is it visible, Sridhar?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry. So here what we are trying to identify, we are trying to identify what are the different events that are going to occur. So how the system is being represented. So that entire thing that we are representing in terms of sequences or in terms of scenarios. So here we have a scenario of a stock broker system, or else say for example if you take a online shopping system, so what happens, a customer will log in into the Flipkart or Amazon or any online website. So once he logins into the system, what he will do, he will search in a particular category, either in electronics or in a fashion or in terms of a books, or whichever the shopping that he requires, he will go, he is going to choose a particular category. So in a particular category, what he is going to select, he is going to apply the filter. So once he apply the filter, what type of product he needs, what brand he requires, so what should be the price items. So after making all the filtering of the system, so what he will do, he will select a particular product. So once the product is being put up into the cart, then he will go for a proceed. So that is a scenario that we are trying to indicate. So after identifying these scenarios, so what type of events that are going to carry out, so that events has to be identified. So after identifying the events, what we need to do, we need to draw this. After identifying the after writing the scenarios, after observing all the events, we need to represent a sequence diagram. So what is this actual sequence diagram indicates? The sequence diagram indicates who are the participants who are involved within a system and how they are going to interact with the system. So once they are going to interact with the system, um, when at what time they are going to till what time they are going to interact, that has to be identified. So to draw the sequence diagram, what we are using a vertical line. So that vertical line we call it as a lifeline. So here we have three different types of objects. So one is a customer, stockbroker system, and securities. So this rectangle line, what we call it as a lifeline. Okay. So here what happens? So first the customer is going to log in into the system. So the broker system will identify whether he is a valid customer or not. So if he is a valid customer, so it will establish as a communication. So once the communication is being established. So what happens? It will display the home page of the portfolio system. So once the portfolio system is being displayed for him, he will enter the purchase of data. So how much of stock that he want to enter. So here what happens? It will once he enters all the data for purchasing the stock, it will go to its. It will connect to its banking statement and it will verify whether the customer is having the sufficient funds to make a transaction. So if it verifies and if sufficient funds are available, then what happens? It will request for the confirmation. So the user will confirm for the purchase. So the order, and then it will display the order number. So what are the different stocks that the customer has purchased? Then once the order is displayed, then it will place the order on behalf of the customer. So where it will go? It will go to the security exchange and it will execute all the order. So this is what we call it as a time span. So within this time span, it will take for a execution of the order. So within this execution order time span, so there can be sub activities that can happen. So once the order is placed, so what happens? The customer will log out. So it will go for insecure communication. And once the execution order is being done, so what happens? It will send to the brokerage system. So that is how the online brokerage system is going to work. So this is an example of a stock brokerage system for purchasing a stock. So after assuming that already the customer has logged in into the portfolio, so he is going to enter the purchase data. So after verifying the funds, it will request for the confirmation. Once the customer gives the confirmation, it will be placing the order and the result will be sent back to the brokerage system. So that is what the stock purchase functionality is going to work. So next, the customer can give the stocking code. So what type of stock he want? So which stock he want? What the customer will do? The customer will enter the stock symbol. So once the stock symbol is being entered into the brokerage system, it will request for the stock data and that will be sent to the security exchange. So what the security exchange will do? It will identify what are the symbols that the customer has put up. So it will identify all the stock details of that particular stock and it will return back to the brokerage system and display the actual code of the stocks. So what he want to purchase or what he want to sell. So identify. So this is one more sequence diagram. So indicating the failure of the purchase. Say for example, you cannot say all the transaction may be a successful. There can be a unsuccessful transaction. So when there is an unsuccessful transaction, so what things that can happen? So here is an example. Say for example, the customer will enter for a purchasing of the stock. So once he enters for a purchasing of that stock, so what happens? It will go for a verification of the fund. Say he is purchasing for the stock of 5,000, but he may not be having a sufficient amount 5,000 in his account. So what happens there? The since there is an insufficient fund, so whatever the code that he has given or whatever the purchase data that he has given, so it will reject the purchase. So what the customer has to do? The customer has to cancel the purchase of the order. So that is how the failure can happen. That is when we are trying to design a model, we need to identify where the error can occur. So what are the different types of exceptions that can occur within a system? So how to handle that exception? So when you have written the exception also within, when you have represented the exception also within a model, so that system can be a good system which can come out with respect to the developer. So next thing is guidelines for sequence model. So when we want to prepare a sequence model, we need to follow some guidelines. So what we need to do, the first thing is prepare at least one scenario per use case. So whatever the functionalities that we have indicated, say for example, purchase of stock, cancellation of the stock, or verify the authorization. So all these things are the functionalities. So whatever the functionalities are there, we need to write the scenario. So what are the different steps, or what are the different events that can be carried out, that has to be identified there. So the next thing is abstract the scenario into the sequence diagrams. So whatever the scenarios that has been written in terms of events, so all the scenarios has to be represented in a terms of a sequence diagram. So after that particular event, which event has to be carried out. So to represent in a particular sequence order, we are trying to represent a scenario. So we need to observe who are what are the objects. So based on our actor, what we are trying to do, we are trying to indicate how the objects are going to interact with each other. Next thing is divide the complex interaction. So if the system is very large, then what happens? You can represent that in terms of a different sequence models. Two or three sequence diagram can be written in terms of a 2 to 3 sequence diagram for that particular system. And next thing is prepare a sequence diagram for each error condition. That means whatever the error conditions are there, so all this error condition has to be represented and that error has to be shown. So that is how we are trying to these are the guidelines that we need to follow when we are trying to represent a sequence model. So next comes the activity model. So when we say an activity model, we need to represent the it will be based on a workflow, or it will be represented similar to what we write an algorithm. So it is a how the control is going from one step to the another step that we are trying to identify with respect to the activity diagram. So here is an activity diagram for stock trade processing. So when we say a activity diagram, so there will be some conditions. So the conditions cannot be shown in terms of a use case model, state model, or a sequence model. So that condition can only be represented through the activity model. So what happens with respect to two or more conditions? Okay, so first it will verify the order, it will execute the order. So if the execution of the order is successful, then what happens? It divides the that we call it as a fork. Okay, the single process will be broke down into different sub processing or sub actions. So that we call it as a fork. So here what happens? It will be breakdown. It will break down into send confirmation, debit confirmation, and the update portfolio. Okay, so what happens after executing these actions? It will come back to the it will come back, and we are combining all the actions together. One, if it is a failure, it will send a failure notice. So when can failure can happen? The failure can happen only if the login credentials are different, or if there is a insufficient conditions. Then what happens? It can have a failure. Okay, so again it will send a failure notice to the user and it will close the order. So to close this order, one more thing is after making a purchase, so what happens? It will debit the account in a customer from the customer, and it will settle the trade. It will update to that particular stock and it will close the order. So this is how the activity diagram is going to work. Next is activities. So how do we specify the activities? So we had in a previous example, we have a execute order has an activity. So the same activity can be represented in a different model, in a different way. So when a customer want to represent the execution order, so what happens? He can have a there can be two things. So one person can be a buyer and one person can be a seller. So for execution of the order, so when it comes for a buyer, so the buyer will be searching for a particular seller at a market price. So the what the seller will be looking, he will be looking for a particular person who can sell the products at the marketplace. Okay, and next thing is what happens. So it has to identify the order. So it can have a limiting order. So if the price is not available or if there is a timeout, again it will come out of the system. So if the price is available and the order is limit, so it will identify the buyer and the seller. So the buyer will find the seller for a better price and he will sell the product, and the buyer will buy the product, and he will make a payment. So that is how the execution of order is going to work. So next thing is branches. So as I said, the branches is nothing but one or more successor. It will be like a if else condition. If one condition is satisfied, then the statement or the arrow within that particular activity or the action is going to work. If the condition is not satisfied, the other action is going to work. So that can be represented only with respect to the activity diagram. So the UML notation for the condition or a branch is a diamond shape. So the diamond shape indicates the multiple successes after that particular activity. So next thing is initiation and termination. So any process that we are going to indicate, so that process should have a indication of a initiation and the final state. The initiation is represented with the solid circle, and from the solid circle there should be an outgoing arrow. So that is how we call it as a initiation, and the termination is represented with the solid. A solid circle is being surrounded with the hollow circle. So that since it the representation of the representation looks like a bull's eye. So that final state or a termination symbol, we call it with the other name called as a bull's eye. So next we have a concurrent activities. So when we want to represent two or more activities that has to be independent of each other, which has to run. So then what we are using a fork. So that fork is being taken care with respect to the heavy synchronization bar. So that can be seen here in a diagram. So with respect to the diagram, so this solid bar represent a synchronization bar. So after so this arrows coming from various action, we call it as a join. So above that, what we call it as a fork. So that is how we are trying to represent a join or a fork for a concurrent execution of the system. And next thing is we need to have a executable activity diagram. So for having the executable activity diagram, what we are identifying, we are need to identify with respect to the certain conditions. So whatever the symbols of activities are there, so when the system is going to receive an activity, so when a token can be raised, so when the condition becomes true, when the condition becomes false, so all those things has to be taken care with respect to the activity diagram. So when we are representing the activity diagram, we need to follow some guidelines. So those guidelines are don't misuse the activity diagram. So whatever the activity diagrams are there, so they are taken care with respect to the use case and the sequence model in such a way that there should be a flow in a system. And the next thing is level diagram. So it should have a consistent level. That means whatever the flow of a system is there, with respect to the flow of a system, we need to represent that in terms of different levels. And when we are using a branching and a conditions, we need to identify whether it is a deterministic or undeterministic models. So with respect to that, we need to identify where the error can occur in a system. So when the error condition has to be represented, so we need to place that error condition in a proper way. And next thing is we need to be careful with respect to the concurrent activities. That means when we are trying to run a parallel activities, we need to get a proper result, and that proper result should be a input to the next action. So in what way that you are going to merge all the actions and how you are going to give up to the next action is very important. And the next thing is you need to have a considerable executable activity diagram. So to represent that with respect to the activity diagram, so whatever the diagram, that flow we have written, so it should have a proper understandability within a system. So that is about chapter 7. So do you have any doubts with respect to chapter 7 or 6? Saket? Saket?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. So tomorrow the remaining 3 chapters I'm going to make a revision, okay? So afternoon I will be taking lab internals for both the batches. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then I'm going to wind up this session. So remaining I will explain tomorrow.